Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this is Hey Brittany, and I'm doing another episode for my Binge Watch Brittany podcast. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about One Tree Hill. So I've been super excited about doing this episode because I love One Tree Hill. I even have a Tree Hill t-shirt, I have a One Tree Hill sweatshirt, and then I used to have a collection of the DVDs a long time ago, back in the early 2000s, but I no longer have those just because when I graduated high school and went to college, I didn't really think about packing up a lot of my childhood stuff that I obviously wish that I still had. Anyway, I'm a huge One Tree Hill fan, so I was planning to do one episode per season, but it's taking me a really long time to be able to do that, which I really hate. So I do want to get better at working towards getting those episodes completed. I don't know how long it's going to take me because I'm not really sure if I want to watch each season and then do an episode, but I've watched the series basically at least 3 or 4 times, so I kind of know what happened even if I don't remember little details. I know everything and how the show turned out and all of that good stuff, and I've been wanting to do a series of episodes on One Tree Hill, but this is going to be my first video, and what I'm going to do in this video is I'm really just going to give like a general kind of conversation kind of recording of One Tree Hill and just really talking about the things that mean a lot to me when it comes to One Tree Hill. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so first things first, how did I get into One Tree Hill? So I am 35. It was in the early 2000s when One Tree Hill came out. And when it came out, Dawson's Creek was really big. It was a huge TV show. However, around that time, I would have been in middle school. And in 2003 is when I started high school. So I was about 13 when I started high school. And when One Tree Hill came out, it was basically for like the next generation, I guess, kind of high school students, just because in 2003, I think Dawson's Creek, they were going to college, and I wasn't really watching TV shows about people going to college. I was watching kind of TV shows about people in middle school and high school and stuff like that. One Tree Hill was perfect timing for me because I have no idea what other basketball TV shows there are, which is why I really love One Tree Hill. So anyway, how did I discover One Tree Hill? One thing I do want to call out about this is that when One Tree Hill came out, I was actually very shocked when I saw it playing on the TV, and I had no knowledge of what this TV show even was. So I watched the WB a lot when I was a kid, and the WB is what the CW used to be. So the WB and UPN combined and they became the CW. So the WB was the network back then that a lot of teenagers and younger people gravitated towards to watch the very popular TV shows that came on 8 p.m., 9 p.m., that sort of thing. So everyone had cable back then. We were all watching the same TV shows, but somehow for me, One Tree Hill was under the radar and I had no idea that this show was even coming. So how I found out about it was it might have been like a Saturday or a Sunday, and I don't know at what point of the season it was, but back then I don't think they replayed TV shows pretty quickly or whatever. I don't even know when this replay would have happened, but I swear it was like a Saturday or Sunday. It was like in the afternoon, the evening, so it wasn't prime time hours is my point. And I come across the scene where Haley and Nathan, they are sitting on the bench. It's like kind of like nighttime. They're on a date and they say I love you to each other for the first time. And I really love that moment because one, I'm really into like relationship drama, whatever, teen drama, so that instantly caught my eye. And so that scene happened. The vibe was right, the tone was right. It just spoke to me, and I really was drawn to the TV show because of that episode. Again, I didn't even know this was about basketball. I just really loved that one scene that I saw, and I really loved, I guess, the chemistry between Haley and Nathan. So I continued watching. I eventually figured out what time it came on, all of that stuff, and I don't know at what point I stopped watching. So I remember being in grad school, and when I was in grad school, it was about maybe 2011 to 2013, and at this point, I believe One Tree Hill was on Netflix, but it was also on the soap channels, so it was constantly playing on those soap opera channel. I don't recall which one it was, but it was constantly and on repeat and all of that stuff. And so it was always on the TV playing. I could watch back previous seasons, previous episodes that I'd watched. And I don't know when I stopped watching, but I kind of got back into it. I remember finding out about the 9th season and kind of just finding out that not all of the characters were coming back. I knew that Peyton and what's his name? Lucas left. I knew that they left in season 6 and all of that stuff. And one of the things that I really hate about One Tree Hill, this is like one of my minor complaints, because again, I really love the TV show. My minor complaint is that I hate how they changed the vibe from the first 4 seasons and then season, I think, 5 through 9, because seasons 1 through 4, those were kind of really gritty and intense, and they were just really, they weren't even dark necessarily, they just seemed more realistic. And then when they switched to season 5 through 9, like literally the lighting got brighter, the tone of the show was lighter, they were trying to make jokes and be funny, and it was almost like it almost became kind of like sitcom-ish, and I don't really like watching sitcoms anymore. And in the 90s, in the late 90s and stuff like that, I did watch sitcoms, but I didn't like that One Tree Hill was kind of taking that vibe, and then I also didn't like the way that the show looked on the TV anymore. I have the same issue with SUV, so for example, Special Victims Unit, Law and Order. When you watch like the early 90s and late 90s or whatever, early 2000s episode of Law and Order SVU, the show had a very different look and feel and vibe to it. When you get maybe 2014 or so, that is, or maybe even earlier, that's when the vibe of the show seems to change, and it just seems like, yes, they're covering heavy topics, but somehow the way it just looks on the screen, it just seems not as heavy as it used to feel. And so One Tree Hill made those changes, I think, from season 5 through season 9. Obviously, I still enjoyed watching it, but I just didn't like the way, the cinematography, I just didn't like that change to the TV show. So obviously there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in One Tree Hill. So we have Nathan and Lucas kind of really being forced to interact with each other in high school. They want to be on the same basketball team. Lucas, okay, first of all, Chad Michael Murray sucks at basketball. I can't even believe that they wanted him to be Nathan, because he to me doesn't seem like he can pull off Nathan the way that James Lafferty did. Like there's no other person who could have played Nathan, and so I can't even imagine Chad Michael Murray as a bad guy and as a good basketball player. So I'm glad that they kept him as Lucas and James was Nathan. I'm glad that he didn't have a big storyline as far as the basketball goes, because he was not good. He was not believable. He had a stunt double and all of that stuff. And so, obviously, anyway, he joins the basketball team. He's really fighting for his spot. Dan is kind of being an a-hole. He's a jerk. He is really the villain throughout all of One Tree Hill. But he does have really great moments. I really love the moment where, this is, I think, after Nathan emancipates, and him and Haley are like official at this point. They don't have a kid yet, and they are playing some school, and this guy's a jerk, and he's like hitting on Haley. And then at this point, I think Dan is like running for mayor or something. He's doing something, so he's a public figure in general, but I think he's more prominent at this point. And so anyway, that rival kid is hitting on Haley. He's a jerk to her. She doesn't like it, and Dan sees this, and he shakes the guy's hand, but he pulls him in close, and he threatened him and said, hey, don't talk to her like that again, or I'm gonna break your hand. And so that was badass, because he really did, even though he gave people a hard time, he really did defend his family and step up when he was supposed to. And so that's why I really love the ending for him, where he was able to redeem himself and save Nathan from when he was kidnapped. I think he was kidnapped overseas, whatever. And eventually, I guess he made his way back to the States. I'm not 100% sure. But what's his name? Dan did was he basically was able to figure out where Nathan was being held, broke into the whatever to get him, and then like they had to fight their way out. They had guns, and then I think he got shot, and then there's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scene at the end where I think he passes away, and he's basically in between kind of the afterlife and kind of not quite in heaven yet. Obviously, people think that he's gonna go to hell. And so anyway, I really love it that he meets up with Keith, and Keith is like, don't worry, little brother, you're my +1. And so I really, really love that moment. for Keith and Dan, because obviously we know that Dan really regretted what he did to his brother and just all of the consequences from making that decision. And again, he was tricked into doing it because it was the actress name was Deborah. It was, what is the mom's name on the TV show? Barb. It was Barb's fault because she was the one who was trying to kill Dan, and Dan thought it was Keith because they had this whole, not petty feud, but they had basically been rivals and fighting for their dad's attention and approval and all of that stuff. And so Keith was the guy who could never do anything right. Dan was the golden child. And then you find out that at some point, I think Dan went to UNC. I really love all of the references to North Carolina, by the way. Obviously, the show is based in Wilmington, and then I think, or it's filmed in Wilmington, and then I'm pretty sure it's Tree Hill, North Carolina as well. But anyway, so Dan had gotten a scholarship to UNC, but he tore his ACL, and he could have made a recovery, but he decided to basically pretend like his career is over so that he could move on from basketball. And his mom lied and helped him cover up that secret. So his dad never knew the truth until that season, that episode. And so obviously the dad is looking at Dan differently, and then Dan is having to deal with his family, like Barb and Nathan, understanding that he felt so much pressure from his dad to be good at basketball that he just turned around and did the same thing to Nathan, knowing how much that destroyed him. And so obviously that was a good moment in One Tree Hill as well. I also am very shocked that not more basketball people, at least that I know of, don't really talk about One Tree Hill. Like, again, One Tree Hill is the only scripted teen drama that I know of that goes into basketball as heavily as it does. Like, you really get to see, like, the pressures of playing basketball at the high school level, trying to get a scholarship, trying to get to the NBA, because now it's completely different, especially with NIL deals. So I know that they were talking about rebooting One Tree Hill, and what I would love to see, I know that Hillary and Sophia are kind of like leading the reboot. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but I know that people are complaining because they don't want it to make it all feminist and all of that stuff. They don't know if Chad's going to be back, and so nobody knows what the reboot is going to look like. Basically, if I were doing the reboot, basically I would have the exact same storylines or major plot, but I would have a modern twist on it. There will be NIL deals. We would have Nathan and Haley still get married, still have a baby. Nathan still has to figure out how to get from high school to the pros. Lucas still has all of his HCM and all of his book drama and all of that stuff. And then we also have Sophia. She is an influencer, and she's a fashion designer, but she's an influencer as well. That would be super interesting. I think for Hillary, for Peyton, with her being into drawing and into music, I don't quite know what I would see for her, but maybe she would be like not a YouTube artist, but she would have like tens of millions of followers on YouTube or something like that, and she would just be an indie musician or an artist, singer, whatever. And oh, obviously, what Hillary in real life, she was a MTV VJ, so I think she would just basically, she could have that worked into her storyline, just because I know that that's kind of something that I feel like is kind of still modern, even though that's really a early 2000s thing. So I would really love for them to just give a modern twist on One Tree Hill and just kind of update it, NIL stuff, have Dan be the exact same, because I think that's always going to, you're always going to have, especially when it comes to sports, you're always going to have a parent who's pushing their kid to be successful, to get to the next level. And then can you imagine how Dan would be reacting if Nathan was getting NIL deals? Obviously, I think Nathan would have still emancipated himself if he did have NIL deals and all of his money, but I think he would have still been struggling, one, maybe with not necessarily how to manage his money, but again, we did see him transition from like the party boy who was kind of like irresponsible, and he was like sleeping around and all of that stuff. And so just having him have that personality and also have money and then also fall in love with Haley, I think that would be a really good storyline to see play out. So I really hope they do something like that. I hope they consider how they can make a reboot happen while keeping it true to the core themes and plots and events of the original One Tree Hill. So it's almost like a retelling of what we already know happens in One Tree Hill, but just kind of like a different kind of spin on it. Like, I know they did that episode where basically Lucas and Nathan switched places, and I really loved when they did that episode that they kept the personalities, so it's not like they made Lucas the better basketball player. Nathan was always the better basketball player regardless of which situation he was in when they did that one episode where they flipped. And so obviously I did not like that episode because I was like, this would not have been a good TV show if Lucas was the main star attraction for basketball and Nathan still ended up with Haley, but it just looked different. Like, I did not like that at all. So I like One Tree Hill as we know it, and I really hope that if they do a reboot that they don't kind of ruin it, because I do want to see kind of like what the future looks like for the One Tree Hill people, but I also don't want to ruin it because right now I have this really good, like, I guess basically what you could say is that once the series ended, that's kind of like where I not necessarily stopped thinking about the cast and the characters, but there was just nothing after that. So I didn't really wonder, like, you know, what happened to them, how did the kids grow up and all of that stuff. And so anyway, speaking of the kids, so Jamie, I would really love to see him kind of in the reboot. So I don't know if the reboot should have him growing up, but obviously it's going to be weird because we know that by now, like in the real timeline of reality, he would be much older. And so I don't know what that looks like, but I would love to see more about him growing up and him going through this basketball journey. Even if he's not the one that is centered around, I think that he should have some kind of role in the reboot as well. And so we're going on 17 minutes, 18 minutes for this video. I did want to keep it really short, but just going back to One Tree Hill, this is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Like, I just can't imagine people not liking One Tree Hill because it's gritty. They cover really intense topics because even like the school shooting episode, that was crazy, especially after Columbine and all of that stuff happening and having Nathan run back into the school because his wife is in there, like a teenager is risking his life because he needs to go in and get his girlfriend, get his wife, whatever. And then to have Peyton bleeding out in the library, she's scared. And then we have Brooke or Brooke actually feeling insecure about Peyton's relationship with Lucas and all of that stuff. And so that school shooting episode was really, really intense. And for some reason, it's making me think of Degrassi when Jimmy got shot. But that was really, really well done. And it was really impactful to show like how people, like when you're in high school, you don't really think about how you're treating people and the impact that you have on them. Because Jimmy, I didn't realize that Jimmy was, I think I knew that, now I know that Jimmy was like featured in the early on episode and stuff like that. And once Mouth became popular, he kind of abandoned that group of friends that he had. And so that's part of why Jimmy hated Mouth, because he left his core friend to hang out with the popular kid. And even that is a weird storyline because in real life, yes, the dorky, geeky guy can have popular friend and be popular himself, but it was just a stretch because of the way that he just expected all of the girls to be into him or be nice to him just because he was such a nice guy. And he didn't really understand that they saw him as like a brother figure. They didn't see him as this nice guy that they wanted to date. And so obviously he had a lot of struggles with that, but he did end up with Millicent, and even their relationship is kind of crazy because Millicent was a virgin and she had never lived with a guy before, and then something happened, I can't recall what it was, but she ended up sleeping with the guy who is married to the actress who is in Modern Family. Owen, is it Owen? She ended up sleeping with Owen, losing her virginity to him. She regretted that, and then she had to go off and like figure herself out and whatever. And so I did like that Mouth eventually ended up with somebody, even if it didn't turn out that well. I also love that the Laguna Beach kid was in that. Stephen somebody, I think it's Stephen. I cannot remember his name. But I love that he was in this because I did see him in Laguna Beach, and then here he is in One Tree Hill, kind of much after Laguna Beach. So that was nice to see that he had a storyline, and then he kind of continued to appear in all of the seasons going forward. I also really loved how, because this is a late 90s, kind of early 2000s thing, where in the TV shows you always had celebrity cameos, and so they obviously had Rick Fox playing the kind of whatever he was, the bookie who was basically making Nathan cheat and point shave. Like, can you imagine Nathan point shaving and cheating while he has NIL deals and stuff like that? That would be crazy. But anyway, Love that Rick Fox was in this. They also made a lot of references to like popular NBA players at the time. So I think they maybe talked about Okafor, and remember that. They talked about maybe Carmelo, maybe LeBron. I'm not 100% sure. And then Nathan was always wearing Nike, Jordan. So he really, really played into, and he is a basketball player in real life, and he really played into the whole athlete, basketball star player personality and energy. So that's another reason why that makes One Tree Hill like an authentic basketball TV show, with the exception of Chad Michael Murray because he was awful. But it was just really, he fit the role so perfectly, and that is what made this show better. One thing I want to call out is I really, really hate, okay, so what is his name? Skills. Skills, I know him from a movie called Sunset Park. He was amazing in Sunset Park. And what I noticed was that in the early seasons, he had this really kind of serious, I'm good at basketball type of vibe. Then as the later season kind of aired and stuff like that, he kind of turned into this goofy caricature of who he should have been, in my opinion. So I was really annoyed and frustrated by that, because I felt like with who he was in Drano, who he was as Drano in Sunset Park. Sunset Park, what time is it? It's time to get live. It's time to represent. So anyway, he had this really, really, really cool role in Sunset Park, and because he played basketball and was good at basketball, and I think he is even a trainer on the sets of movies that have basketball in them. I'm not 100% sure, but I did read that somewhere. And anyway, I thought that he should have had a bigger role in this TV show. Like he could have literally been Lucas Scott instead of Chad Michael Murray, because he would have been a better basketball player. Obviously that doesn't make sense because one's black and one is white, whatever. But they just could have used him a lot better in the storyline. And I really hated that he thought he was either going to end up working in a factory or he was going to get a scholarship to college, and we know that he got a scholarship to college. And so I really would have liked for things to turn out better for him, but he does have an amazing, amazing relationship with Jamie, which is really good to see. The other thing I have to talk about is Quentin's shooting. So that was a huge turning point in this series as well, because you do have a black basketball player who is getting a prominent role. He's the new best thing at Tree Hill High, whatever. And then we have him dying at a gas station because somebody's robbing it. And this is the same guy who attacked Brooke in her store. So we have the whole thing play out where Brooke is like, you know, I didn't report it, and if I had reported it, Quentin wouldn't be dead, and all of this stuff. And so that was really sad to see. I'm glad that we had a black athlete get a lot of airtime the way that he did, but I really wish that he could have had a different kind of outcome for his role on the show. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is that the theme song. So the theme song is really, really iconic. Like, I've never listened to Gavin DeGraw before One Tree Hill, and I don't really know any of his other songs, but I Don't Want to Be, that is an amazing song. Like, the person, I want to be the sound person on these TV shows and movies. I don't have like a good collection of music that I listen to, but these people have really amazing jobs that they're able to pick perfect songs to represent a TV show, a moment. That's like a huge responsibility, because whatever song you pick really, really impacts how the show is perceived. And I Don't Want to Be is a great, great theme song. And so I actually was really mad when they removed it, I think for maybe seasons 4, 5, and 6 and something like that. And they brought it back, I think, in season 8. And what they did differently in season 8 was they have different artists sing their own variation of the song. I really like Laura Isabel's version of the song, because the way she did it was kind of true to the vibe of the song. It was kind of sad, depressing, but also serious, and then it just hit me right in my soul. Like, that was such a perfect rendition of this song, this theme song, and I wish they kept it all 8 seasons, because that really did make a huge impact on the show and kind of add to the legend that is One Tree Hill. And before I wrap up this video, one thing I want to call out is that I'm kind of really annoyed at the way Nathan's basketball career turned out. Obviously, we know that he got drafted. He went to Maryland. He went to, first he went to like a junior college or a D2 college. Then he transferred to Maryland. Then he went to the NBA. He was supposed to be a top draft pick, got injured, got thrown through a window, couldn't walk, lost everything. Then he made a comeback, and then he was able to get himself basically back to like the NBA basically. And I really hate that we did not get to see his college years, and we also did not get to see him have like a full pro career, because that would have been amazing to see. Because we know that Brooke has this like high profile life as this fashion designer, but can you imagine if you had Brooke as this fashion designer, Lucas as this novelist, Haley as this crazy well-known indie singer who's just like touring everywhere. I don't really know what Peyton does. Not to be rude, I don't know what she did, but that would have been crazy, because I remember seeing somewhere like, how did one friend group have all of these famous successful people? And I think it's really important to see that, because not everybody in your friend group is either broke or hasn't accomplished anything, or just one or two people. So it's really cool to see this friend group, this core friend group of people who are super successful or super successful in life and able to accomplish something. And so just going back to One Tree Hill, the one thing I really love about One Tree Hill, and I didn't appreciate this when I was younger, because I kind of grew up in like a bigger city, but obviously Tree Hill, Wilmington is kind of like a smaller city, and it's kind of more tight-knit. Everyone knows everything, that type of situation. I did not grow up like that. Like, I went to a private school instead of like a local high school, and so the people in my neighborhood, I did not go to school with them anyway, and then we didn't go to the same school, and so I did not have that that close knit kind of like community growing up, of knowing all the kids in my neighborhood and stuff like that. And so I really love that small town vibe, and I actually wish that I could live in Tree Hill. If this was a real parallel universe, I would absolutely go to One Tree Hill, and I would just basically live out all of the seasons on repeat. Like, it's that amazing. Like, once you start watching one episode and then you just kind of continue into it, it's really, really crazy and insane. So yeah, so we're going on 30 minutes for this video. I didn't plan for it to be this long, but as you can see, I am really, really excited about One Tree Hill. So I'm glad that I came on and kind of just did this general random video of me talking about One Tree Hill and just kind of going through things as it pops up in my head. But again, I really love One Tree Hill. And just to kind of add one more thing, because I keep finding things I want to talk about, and so I know that the girls, so Hillary, Sophia, and Bethany, they have a podcast where basically they're watching all of the episodes and they're talking about like what was going on behind the scenes, what was going on in their own lives. And I haven't really watched or listened to much of their podcast, and I keep telling myself, you love One Tree Hill, why are you not watching it? And that's kind of where I got the inspiration to talk about the TV show from my perspective and the impact that it had on me. And that's why I really wanted to do a series on One Tree Hill, and really not talk about each individual episode, but talk about each individual season. And so hopefully I can get that done for you guys, because I'm really super excited to share One Tree Hill with all of these people who love One Tree Hill. I'm really glad that like younger generations, younger people are into One Tree Hill, because we have streaming services. And so just really that ability to make these older TV shows and introduce them to a newer audience is really amazing. It's a beautiful thing to see. And so I'm really glad that there are people out there who love One Tree Hill as much as I did. And it really meant a lot to me growing up. I want my own Nathan. Obviously that has not happened yet, but my favorite characters for sure were Nathan and Haley. And so we are going over 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.